We are going to work problem 13-27, a sell or process further decision. And it's on page 614 of the book. So we've got one of those situations where you process something to a split off point and then you can make this thing or the other thing, right? So like you process milk and now I can make half and half, or I can make butter, you know, something like that. So it's like that. So you like, which is more profitable? Which do I want to do? How do I want to use this? So I'm going to show this to you out there in Connect. And so to do that, I need to share my screen. All right. Okay, we're shared. All right, so here we are out here at Connect at problem 13-27 from your book. Yours will look like this. It'll just have different numbers in your homework. So here's what we got. We got a company that makes something called Grit 337 and Sparkle silver polish. So there's grit and sparkle. So they make the grit, and then when they end up with grit, they can go ahead and process a little bit more, and then it turns into sparkle, right? So you can sell, they've got two choices, right? I can just sell it as grit for $1.60 a pound. Oh, it costs $1.60 a pound to make. I can sell it for $2 a pound. I can just sell the grit. Or I can process it and make it into a paste and it becomes sparkle, and I can sell that for $4 a jar. All right. And to make a jar of it requires just 1/4 of a pound of grit, right? So, you know, selling the stuff for $2 a pound or $4 a jar using just 1/4 of a pound. So I don't know, it depends on how much it costs to turn it into polish. So to make it into polish, we have to add some stuff, right, to make it into paste, and maybe put it in a machine and stir it, stuff like that. So we have to add 65 cents of other ingredients, direct labor of $1.48. There's our total direct costs. Overhead is 25% of direct labor. Fixed manufacturing, so we have a production supervisor and some depreciation on the mixing equipment. All right, so let's see. Production supervisor has no duties other than to oversee, so they might not be necessary if we don't make sparkle. Mixing equipment has special purpose and specifically make the polish. So it can produce up to 15. Its resale is negligible, does not wear out. So that basically means, well, we don't really have to consider the depreciation as a differential cost because we're stuck with it. It's not like we can sell it. Anyway, so that's the stuff. Okay, we do have some advertising costs, so that would be a fixed cost that could go away if we quit making silver polish. Variable silver selling costs are 7.5% of sales. So there's a decline in demand for silver polish, right? People don't buy as much silver as they used to, that's for sure. So feel maybe more profitable to just sell grit and stop selling sparkle. So let's see, is that a good idea or not? How much incremental revenue per jar do we get? All right, so incremental revenue per jar. So let me get my little notepad up here. Okay, so to figure that out, we have to figure out just the difference between a selling price of a jar and a 1/4 pound of grit, right? Because there's a 1/4 pound of grit, 1/4 pound of grit per jar of polish, right? So polish price equals 4. Then I can subtract out the less 1/4 pound of grit, right? Because I could just sell the grit. quarter pound of grit. How much is the grit? Is $2 a pound. So that means a quarter pound would be 50 cents, right? It would take 4 to make a pound. It's $2 a pound. So 2 divided by 4 is 50 cents. All right, so minus 0.50. So my incremental revenue per jar is equal to $3.50. So I make a little more money by selling it as grit. My revenue, it doesn't count my cost, but that is my revenue, incrementally more per jar. So what's my cost per jar? And then I can subtract that out and tell if I'm getting contribution margin that's better than the grit. Oh, I guess I should answer this. Incremental revenue per jar. This is $3.50. All right, so now what's my contribution margin per jar? Remember, per jar. All right, so now, okay, well, I have to figure out the costs of the variable costs per jar, right? So my incremental revenue is equal to 3.50 per jar. All right, so now I'm going to subtract out all my incremental costs. Right, in other words, things that will go up as I make sparkle. All right, so there's some other ingredients, right? So there's some raw material that was, right, we have to add, I guess, paste to it or something, 6.65, and this is per jar, yes, processing of a jar. So this is per jar, so 65 cents per jar. So there we go, so minus 0.65, and then there's direct labor, $1.48 per jar, direct labor. $1.48. There was overhead that they told me was based on direct labor. Okay, processing silver polish R. Variable manufacturing overhead, 25% of direct labor cost. So if direct labor cost, so overhead, variable overhead is 1.48 times 0.25, right? So that's $1.48 times 0.25 is equal to minus 0.37. 1.48 times 0.25 is 37 cents. Yeah. Okay, so variable overhead, that's something else. And then we had some variable selling costs. With the processing supervisor, variable selling costs are 7.5% of sales. 7.5% of sales. So we sell a jar for $4. Variable selling, so that's 4 times 0.075. Right, so 7.5% times $4 is equal to 30 cents. Right. So here. Okay, so I take 350 minus 65 minus $1.48 minus 37 and minus 38, and I come up with 70 cents per jar. All right, so there's my incremental contribution margin, 70 cents per jar. So, okay, great. How much is it? How much incremental contribution margin do they make per jar? Okay, so I get an extra 70 cents. So the next question is, how many jars must be sold to exactly offset the avoidable fixed costs to produce? Okay, so the avoidable fixed costs. So we don't have to advertise anymore. So there's 4. This poor supervisor is going to have to go. Maybe they can get sent over to the grit line. I hope they don't get fired. But so we're going to say 4,000 and 3,000. Remember, this stuff is sunk, so that doesn't matter anymore. So 4,000 looks like 4,000 and 3,000 to me. So avoidable fixed costs are the supervisor who was 3,000 a month, and the advertising, which was 4,000. So my total is 7,000. That's what I can avoid. All right, and what I'm calculating here is how many jars must be sold to exactly offset the avoidable. Well, my contribution margin is 70 cents. So to offset, I take 7,000 and divide it by 70 cents per jar, and that's equal to 10,000 jars. Right, 7,070 cents per jar. All right, so we need, in order to for Sparkle to work for us, we need to sell 10,000 jars of Sparkle. If we're not able to sell 10,000 jars of Sparkle, we should cut it out. All right, so that's the answer to 3 is 10,000. Now, these next 2 questions are, if you sell 9,000, how does that work? Well, we know that's not a good idea, right? We know we need to sell 10,000, so we know we're going to have a disadvantage. If you sell 11,500, what's the financial advantage? Well, we know it's going to be an advantage because we already figured out 10,000 is to break even. So if we sell 9,000, right? To figure out the financial advantage or disadvantage, right? I need to figure out what could I avoid. I could avoid the 7,000. And so what would I be getting contribution margin wise, right? So I know at 10,000 I get exactly 0. So at 9,500 I must be getting something less. So if I sell 9,000 jars times 0.70, I'll be getting $6,300, right? But I'm having to pay out that 7,000. So that means really I'm losing $700, right? So even if I sell 9,000 and I end up getting 6,300 in cash, I didn't get to avoid my avoidable costs. I had to pay the supervisor, I had to pay the advertising. So that means 6,300 minus 7,000 gives us a disadvantage of 700 per month. Oh, we don't fill that in. Okay. Then 11,500 jars. Okay, well now we know we'll be making some money at that because we know our 10,000 was. So 11,500 times 0.70 equals 8,050. Great. And so I know that I still have my avoidable costs now because I didn't avoid them, right? So that's the difference is 1,050. So if I still, it's worth it. I'm going to be making an additional $1,050. So that's good. Okay, so that finishes up the chapter 13 homework problems. We do have a problem for 14, so that will be in a separate video. See you later.